Hey guys, hi, I'm Montel Williams. Look, I'm so looking forward to you joining me along with Dov Barron on his Leadership and Loyalty Stay Curious podcast, because we're talking about all kinds of things. We're going to give you a little bit of history of me as Montel Williams, the talk show host, but I'm also going to keep you up to date on what I've been doing since I stopped the Daily Show. And I'm going to also give you some information about how you can improve your life. I think through some of the things that I've done, some of the ways that I kind of help to work to improve others' lives. So please, come on, be a part of the conversation. Stay curious.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Barron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. What's clear is that PTSD in all of its forms is showing up at epidemic levels, and it's not just in the military. Some people have been at the front line of that battle to find a cure, to find some way of treating it, and there is significant research into the uses of natural and, of course, non-pharmaceutical treatments for many ailments, including PTSD. Now, let me challenge you to stay curious and remember that for the next 2 episodes, our guest expert is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy with a degree in General Engineering and International Security Affairs. So this is not somebody who's doing a fly-by-night sort of things. He's served in both the Marine Corps and the Navy, retired after 26 years of service, went on to become an Emmy Award-winning TV host with a nationally syndicated show that was syndicated for 17 years on CBS. He's a tireless advocate for those who struggle with PTSD and MS. And can you guess who he is? Well, more about that in a moment. As always, we need your help in staying relevant, so please do us a favor, go on over to wherever it is that you tune in to podcasts, and do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. We do really appreciate it, and it makes a difference. If you are a regular listener, thank you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We are honored and so grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. By the way, I know you're curious. My name is Dov Barron. I'm your host, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. Curious to know more? Simply go to dovbarron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Our guest for the next couple of episodes is a decorated former naval officer who's earned a degree from the Defense Language Institute in Russian and Mandarin. While serving in the military, he was the recipient of 2 Meritorious Service Medals, 2 Naval Commendation Medals, 2 Navy Achievement Medals, and various other military awards and citations. He is an inspirational speaker, a prolific author who has had 4, no less than 4, bestsellers. He is an entrepreneur, an Emmy Award-winning host of the nationally syndicated, wait for it, drum roll please, Montel Williams Show, that for 17 years was nationally syndicated with CBS. He is a tireless healthcare advocate and currently the host of the Lifetime series Military Makeover with Montel. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome Mr. Montel Williams.
Thanks so much. Thank you, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. Is it like being in front of a big crowd again?
It's crazy. It's unbelievable. Look, I don't think you did anything wrong. I believe that somebody may have given you a little bit of incorrect information. My military career spanned 22 years.
22 years. Okay. I apologize. Thank you.
19 years active. The rest I did in the reserves. Then I got out. So I retired after really 22 years. So I just wanted to figure that out. And my degree in Russian came from the Defense Language Institute. My study in Chinese was while at the Naval Academy. That was my language at the Naval Academy. So I just wanted to
Was it really?
Yes.
Mandarin?
Yes.
So do you still speak Mandarin?
Then I tell you, what's that old saying? You know, when you don't use it, you lose it.
Is it right?
Using it. Well, here's what's crazy. I graduated from the Naval Academy. I became a special duty intelligence officer. And what does that mean? It's just a very, very, lofty way to say I was a cryptologic special duty officer. So I held for a while some of the highest clearances that our country has to give. I mean, we hear a lot about this clearance thing right now.
Hold on a second. So do you have any documents at your house in a drawer?
I don't. I was looking around to see if I had.
I just wanted to check.
Let's jump on that right now. Let me make my public statement on that. Damn it, if I had taken one document that I had out of a skiff, I'd still be in jail right now today. You'd be doing this interview with me on a telephone from some prison. And
you'd be wearing an orange suit.
I'm just so disgusted in this whole thing. Let's go on. However,
okay.
But what does the military do? So I take Chinese at the Naval Academy. I graduate, and they send me off to the Defense Language Institute for Russian. You would think they sent me off to the Defense Language Institute to further my Chinese. No, they sent me off to study Russian. So honestly, I'm one of those weird kind of people. I probably would never be, a tri or quadlingual person, because for me, English is my primary language. I can learn one more, but for every word I learn of that one, if I learn another language, I lose a word of that. So it's kind of weird. Like, while I was studying Russian, I literally watched my Chinese go right out the window. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Every word I took in Russian, I lost the word Chinese.
Well, in that case, Privyet and Lehoma or Wei.
Yeah, there you go, for sure.
Depending on whether you're Mandarin or whether you're Hong Kong or China. So I don't speak any of those languages, but I know about a few words in a lot of languages, but that's it.
Enough to get you in trouble. That's okay, right?
No, not even enough to get me in trouble. Just enough to make sure that I don't get in trouble. It's the other way around.
There you go. Especially if you have a smile on your face when you say it.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, mate. So let's start here. Let's jump into where we always like to start, which is I believe that human beings are driven by meaning, and we all subjectively decide what gives our lives meaning, and oftentimes that will change. There are people who served in the military who've become pacifists. There are people who were pacifists who joined the military, just as examples, just because we were talking about military earlier. What is the origin story of what gives your life meaning?
The story is a long one, so I won't bore you with that, but I will tell you that very, very early on, just being an African-American growing up in this country, and, we don't have to delve in deep, but I will just tell you that there was a time very early on in my life when I realized that I alone was responsible for the definition of who I am. And that really centered home with me when I was probably about 11 years old.
Wow.
I refused to live down to other people's expectations and knew unequivocally what those other people's expectations were for my life and plight. And it hit me in a very hard way. So I literally decided very early on in life that I'm going to be who defines who Montel is. Not some teacher, not some cop, not some person down the street, me. And because of that, I set my life about understanding empathy in a different way, empathy in a way that made me curious about other people, made me curious about what my true impact on this planet would and should be. And I set about from a very early, look, I went to high school. I was a product of busing here in the United States.
Right.
Bus from, a small black enclave neighborhood to an all-white school. And, I ended up ascending to become the president of my class for my junior year and my senior year. I was a student elected to the Board of Education in my county that I was in. I was very much involved in student politics and student government. I entered the military immediately following high school not because I had a calling, but because I recognized the burden that I was the youngest of four. So the burden my other siblings had put on my parents in attempting to get college money to go to school. So I thought maybe let me go to Marine Corps and I can get that money myself and be able to do it. And then, of course, I got shifted over and went to the Naval Academy. So I got my degree anyway. I was 4 years for it, but I have 4 years, to pay back the time that I was there. And, I realized very early on that I just really it wasn't like I had a calling, but I just knew that everything was bigger than me.
So when you were a kid, you said about being 11 years old. Like, I know there were certain events in my life. There was one when I was very clearly when I was 7. There's another one very clearly when I was 10. Is there an event that makes you go, you know what? You're trying to define who I am, and I'm not, like, I get it that I can change that?
Let me tell you, I was going to try not to go through a long story, but see if I can cut it down and edit it for you. I'm the youngest of 4 kids.
Right.
And I had 2 parents at home who, I don't remember ever a moment that neither of them was working.
Right.
My mother had 3 jobs. My father had 3 jobs, and my father was a shift worker. And one of the things that he demanded when he literally was home at the time of dinner, because he worked mids, days, and eves, meaning, he worked from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, then for 4 days in a row. Then he worked from 4 in the afternoon until midnight for 4 days in a row. And then he went from midnight till 8 in the morning for 4 days in a row. And on the days that he was home at dinner time, because that was the only time that he really wasn't sleeping in between his jobs.
Sure.
And at the same time he did that, he would get 2 days off, and he would be he worked in house construction and home construction. He was a carpenter. Right. So he literally, the dude just worked. I don't remember him not working. So anyway, one of the requirements that he had when he was home was that all 4 kids had to come to the dinner table because our job was to get an education. He was working his ass off to allow us to go to school. So in his perspective, when we came to the dinner table, every child had to come to the dinner table having already looked up, studied 4 words that you could use, you could spell, define by the Webster's Dictionary, because he bought the Webster's Dictionary, made sure we had it in the house. And he also bought the Encyclopedia Britannica, put that in the house. Yeah. But you had to be able to spell it, define it, and use it in a sentence. Of course, I was younger than my oldest sibling, 6 years older than me. So I wasn't in school at the time, but I would come to the table, and at age 4 or 5, 3, 4, I can remember my older siblings, my father required them to learn extra words to give me words to say.
Right.
So I'm, as he went around the table, your turn, your turn, your turn. Got to me, I had to have a word that I could spell, use in a sentence, and define. So, needless to say, part of the reason why I have such a big mouth, I think, is because of that early on in life. But other things, when I went to elementary school, dude, I was, probably 3, 4 levels ahead in English and in spelling. So, again, I was also rather rambunctious kid. I think I'm glad that I grew up at the time I did, because when I grew up later on, somebody would have said that I had ADD or ADHD or something like that. They would throw me in some little category that I would not have excelled. But back then, because I was so prolific verbally and I could write, the local radio station in my area ran a contest where once a week they would pick stories that children would tell. Children would read it on the radio. So, your goal was to write something good enough to make it to the radio, right?
Of course.
And, I was in 3rd grade when this happened. So at that time, I was really just turning 9. And I had the luck of having 2 of my stories been selected and read on radio before Thanksgiving. It was like, I'm bad, right? And so I set about writing a story for Christmas that I thought would be, my, chaise de resistance, the best story I've ever done. Yeah. So I wrote the story, and I'll tell you about it a little bit. Maybe your listeners won't be interested in listening very carefully to this, but my story is about the fact that Christmas was coming up. I didn't have a lot of money. I had about, $8 or $9 that I had saved up, but I wanted to go to the local store and buy some Christmas presents for all my family members because I thought I was rich. But you're talking like 9 years old.
Sure.
Come on, man. Rich.
You got $10, $9 when you're 9. It's like, whoa,
rich, dude. So
exactly.
I wanted to go to the local store, buy some gifts.
Yeah, my granddaughter said recently that she wants a convertible Mustang, and I said, "Well, are you going to buy it?" She goes, "I've got some Starbucks coupons." That's the mindset, right?
Yeah, that's the mindset, right? So so my story went, I had this money, and I was going to go to the store and buy some gifts for my family, and I went to the store and I bought all these gifts, but then I looked at my pocket and I didn't have enough money to get them wrapped. So I went downstairs to the area in the store where they wrap gifts, and I noticed it was all dirty. And I said to the lady down there, "Ma'am, if you wrap my gifts, I'll clean up your store, or I'll clean up your store if you wrap my gifts." And she said she would. I said, okay. So I swept up her floor for like 4 days in a row, and she wrapped all my gifts. And I took my gifts home and put them under the tree. And then Christmas Day came, and yay, everybody had a wrapped gift. And it was just unbelievable. That was my story, right? So I thought that was a story that would win. And, when I got that story back from my third grade teacher, there was a big F on my paper.
Whoa.
And a big red F in red circled. And then there was one word in my entire paper that was circled over and over and over and over again. And I couldn't figure out what the devil this was. Dude, first off, back then, if you remember, we raised children with the idea spoil or spare the rod, spoil the child. And I had a father who believed that very strongly. So I knew I was going to get a what whipping had I taken it home. So I took that paper home and I hid it under my bed between my mattress and box springs. A couple days later, I took it back to the class and I asked the teacher, I said, "I thought this was like the best story I've ever written. What was wrong with it?" And she looked me in the face, and I'm in the third grade. She looks me in the face and she said, "You people only have one thing on your mind, and that's why you will never be nothing in life." Threw the paper at me and I walked away. And I'm looking at the paper trying to figure out, what is she talking about? And I'm looking at this one word that was circled in red. And I hid that paper under my mattress and box springs for 3 years until I was in the 6th grade, smart enough to be able to understand the words in a dictionary. And then I looked at that paper again and realized, excuse me, I had spelled one word wrong in that entire paper. What word do you think it was? And I've said it to you 3 or 4 times. What word do you think I spelled wrong?
In the story, I have no idea. Go ahead, please.
I spelled the word wrapped wrong. I spelled the word R-A-P-E-D instead of W-R-A-P.
With the W, right.
And that woman looked me in the face and said, "This proves that you people only have one thing on your mind." I'm a 3rd grade kid. And I literally took that paper in the 6th grade and went, "Are you kidding me?" This woman's literally equated me to this term rape, which means sexually assaulting someone that I've now looked up in the dictionary and recognized that she's called me a rapist in the 3rd grade. How dare you?
Right.
And that's the day that I said to myself, I don't give a damn what any adult says to me ever. I alone will be the person who defines who I am. And from that moment on, that set me on this path of just trying to not prove her wrong as much as to prove myself right.
Mm-hmm.
I could be on a journey of my own making. And
that's such an important story because, in my work, one of the things that becomes clear is I do a lot of things like I'm designing a presentation right now around identity addiction, and that we get addicted to an identity. But the trouble with that is that the identity is not usually ours. Right. It's one that was put upon us. So like you having that put upon you in the 3rd grade, which is quite disgusting. I mean, I was kind of when she said "you people," Because I got you people too when I was a kid, because I was a poor Jew.
Right.
So, you people only care about money. I'm like, we don't have any money.
Right.
We don't have any food, let alone money. So, but this putting that on somebody, I mean, you obviously rebelled against that. You became articulate. You went on, you had all kinds of massive success. But how many other kids would have taken that on? How many other kids would have gone, okay, I guess this is who I am? Because an adult always knows better. And the fact that you bucked against that, of course, that became the fuel that drove you in your life. But for others, it would be the fuel that drives them down a dark road to be the kind of person that many of whom you interviewed on the Montel Williams Show.
Absolutely. And I think that's as you put together your program, I mean, we have to recognize that we have choices in life. We can live up to our own expectations or down to others.
Absolutely.
I've lived down to anybody else's expectations but my own. Even to the day, I will not be defined by other people. I will be defined by me, myself, period.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It's an important story. I do really appreciate that.
Sure.
So now the natural question, because you were on CBS for 17 years, I clearly remember you. In fact, my brother-in-law's nickname was Montel. And my brother-in-law is a brown guy who had a black goatee, earrings, and a shaved head. So everybody, and he's brown, he's not black, but everybody said, "Hey, Montel," that was his nickname because you were iconic. You were quite iconic. There was a look about you. There was a way you carried yourself. It was an iconic look. And you had the shaved head before it was the cool thing. Now everybody's head shaved. Right?
Way before it was Vogue. As a matter of fact,
exactly.
Well, very funny. Do you know that Michael Jordan even said to me, "It's because of you that I shave my head."
Is that right?
He said to me, "It's because of you I shave my head." And if you go back in time, go back to 1991, before the show started and went on the air nationally, internationally, there weren't a lot of people running around with bald heads. It was Yul Brynner, and most people called them cue ball. It didn't made up bad names for them.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Brought it into your living room and made it a household thing.
Yeah,
I think it made it more acceptable. And there's a lot of guys like me that have, you look pretty good because your hairline's still sitting down.
Oh, I've still got good hair. Yeah.
No, but dude, I'll tell you, I was, unfortunately, I and my older brother, the two of us had the hairline of my grandfather, and my grandfather, I think, was bald by the time he was naturally bald. By the time he was, he had that runway down the middle of his head. By the time I was 21, mine was receding so bad. By the time I was 22, I was like, screw it. If I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it all the way. If I'm gonna go bald, I'm not gonna look like Bozo with hair coming out of the side of my head. Cut it off.
You didn't want the horseshoe.
When I first shaved my head in the military, I was the day that I 2 days before I entered the Naval Academy, and I literally was almost put up on orders because back then the military considered a shaved head an eccentric haircut.
Oh, that's hysterical.
I was ordered for 1 full year to grow hair.
Oh my God, that is crazy. That's so funny.
Yep.
So the reason I was saying all that is, you were a host on this show, and, the natural question is, where do old TV hosts go when they come off broadcast TV? And do you miss that platform? Because the world is obviously, the world of entertainment and TV shows and talk shows has changed dramatically since then. So, a lot of them just sort of fade off into the distance and we don't really know. And people who are not following you wouldn't know all the the amazing amount of work you've done since then. People who watch the Montel Show just were watching the Montel Show. So first of all, do you miss that world?
Well, first, let me say, I literally right now am doing 3 shows that are on broadcast television. One is on, all 3 of them are on Lifetime.
Right.
One show is called Military Makeover, where I host a team of people that go into deserving veterans' homes, and we make their homes over from the ground up with the help of community vendors that actually donate supplies to do it. I do
Beautiful.
another show that's called Military Makeover Operation Career, where I feature businesses that that seek to hire veterans, and we give that information out so the public knows that there's businesses out there that are seeking out, military members because of their particular expertise. And then I also do a show that's called The Balancing Act, which is a show that is kind of like a morning talk show. I have a female co-host, and we interview different companies and different people about things that they are providing to society. So I still have my feet in, but at the same time, when I started the Montel Williams Show, I moved on to continue working on things to kind of do more than just me. I mean, things that are bigger than me. I have been involved in veterans issues, and I'll never get out of veterans issues. I've been involved in everything from helping to move medical devices to public forum, take them public. Medical device that actually worked for traumatic brain injury and MS and other neurological disease. I work on a protocol right now that is one of the quintessential and literally should be the standard of care for something that you talked about in the open, which is PTSD.
Yep.
It's a protocol called RTM,
Yep.
which has now been, analyzed by the governing bodies that assess protocols like that, ISTSS, which is an organization that considers this one of only 2 cures for PTSD in existence in the world today. That protocol is being utilized right now as we speak in Poland and in the Ukraine, treating not only warfighters, but civilians who are going through the devastation of the war that they're going through.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot about that in the second half of the show.
Sure, and I work on, I'm working on another project, which is called My Medical Images, which is I don't know if you know anything about this, but, if, let's say you had a CAT scan or a PET scan or an MRI in the last month or two, you'll be hard pressed to take that MRI, CAT scan, or PET scan to a hospital that wasn't the original hospital and have them be able to read it because the equipment doesn't translate. I may have used a 3.5 Tesla MRI in Maryland, and there may be a 3.6 Tesla MRI in London. It can't read the data. So
oh my goodness.
if I get injured, it's worthless. And that came about because, I will let your viewers know that about 4.5 years ago, I suffered a major hemorrhagic stroke, cerebellar hemorrhagic stroke that normally kills 50% of people who have it. And while I was laying in that hospital, the doctor said, I know that you're a guy with MS, so you must have had scans of your brain. Can you get us any of those scans? Well, after reaching out to 10 different hospitals, none of them could be read at the hospital that I was in.
Wow.
So it's worthless. Well, there's a company that has created a algorithm that allows for medical images to be seen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer at DICAD, diagnostic quality images, that you, the patient, can take control of your images and share them with the doctor. You can walk into a doctor's office and say, no, here you go, take a look at that. And the doctor's office will be able to see your diagnostic level images that way. So I'm working to get that moved around the country. And I got involved because I know how, right now we have veterans here in America who are all over the country that are guys who are suffering from wounds that they have to go back to Washington, D.C., go to another hospital to be treated for. And, if they want to take their images, they have to pile them up in an envelope and carry them there, put them personally, and then they turn them out. And they may or may not be able to read them.
Crazy.
This could settle that just like that. And the company I'm working with is doing an incredible job for that. I just, and right now, there's another company that just approached me about a piece of technology that I think is going to literally change the world in brain science. I won't go into detail about the company name, but the product is if you will, think about a shower cap or a swimming cap with electrical leads on it. This thing does, and in a form of EEG that once analyzed and compared against its data bank, which is one of the biggest data banks for EEGs in the world, They have well over, I think it's about 1.5 million to 2 million EEGs that they've already done. They use AI to compare one scan to another scan so that they have a definitive diagnosis over here. Let's say even something as PTSD, something as or depression, or concussive injury, or Alzheimer's, or Parkinson's, or anything. They can do a comparison immediately within 1 hour. They can tell, let's put it this way, if let's say you're a soccer player, if you had a scan done before the season, and then in game number 3, you whacked your head really hard against another person's head, they can analyze you in 1 hour in the locker room during halftime. And, you may have to sit out part of the third quarter, but you sit out for a second. They analyze you. They can tell you the extent of your concussive injury based on this analysis using this device in 1 hour. Brilliant. So I really think that's going to be a breakthrough for all those who suffer from any form of, brain trauma or are worried about their brain health.
I'm so glad I asked that because, again, we tend to think of people who have been in the spotlight, the big spotlight, and we tend to think that they sort of fade away and get a job at Trader Joe's, or somewhere like that, and or become alcoholics or depressed or, and there are so many people like yourself doing such important work. And you still, obviously, 3 shows on broadcast TV, you're still obviously got a spotlight, but you're doing so many other things. And this is why, when you and I had talked before, I was like, yeah, I really want to have him on because there's a lot of insight for people. Because one of the things that I speak a lot about is we are a fame-driven society now. Right? When kids are asked at school, what do you want to be? The answer is famous a lot of the time. Well, what the hell does that mean? Like, there's nothing in that. No, it doesn't mean. So what it means is it means significance and notoriety. And as a result, people become famous for things that are not so great. They do things that are rather destructive to themselves. And of course, a lot of people have gone down that path. And I wanted people to understand that fame, whatever it is, can also be a platform that leads you beyond the spotlight. And that's definitely what it's done with you. And in part 2 of the show, because we are going to end part 1 here, but in part 2 of the show, I want to talk about this new standard of treating PTSD. I want to talk about you and the breakaway from the spotlight that happened really from your diagnosis and I believe from the diagnosis of MS and what came out around that because you had MS or you deal with MS, and how you helping other people deal with that, as well as the PTSD, as well as all the other things that you're doing. But before we do that, I'd love for you to tell people where they can find out more about you and about the organizations that you're involved with so that people can reach out.
Well, they can really follow me at Montel_Williams. And on Facebook, it's Montel Williams Fan. You can follow me there. But I have a podcast that's out. It's a podcast, and it's called Let's Be Blunt. And I also have another one that's called Free Thinking. So you can look up either one of those and spend some time checking that out. We both of them have had some unbelievable guests on, and I've had just an incredible time doing that. So yeah, they can follow me that way.
Wonderful. And we will, of course, make sure that we post all of the links to all the ways in which you can reach out to Montel and follow his work. And we are going to be back in just one click. Remember, it's just one click to part 2 of the show. And till then, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about, first of all, how you may have been allowing other people to define who you are. And maybe that's worth a question. Because if you're not defining who you are, somebody else will. And you will raise up or down to whatever that is. So we really need to stay curious about who we surround ourselves with and who we listen to. And remember that just because somebody isn't in the spotlight that you recognize anymore doesn't mean they're not doing amazing work. We're going to be back in part 2, just one click away. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.